I came home early that day, feeling a rare burst of energy and excitement. The sun was shining, and a cool breeze made everything seem perfect. I thought it would be a nice surprise for Jessica if I joined her for lunch. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed our gardener Mark was still there. Strange, I thought. He usually left by this time. Stepping inside, I was greeted by an unusual silence. "Jessica?" I called out, but there was no response. Maybe she was in the shower or taking a nap. I decided to head upstairs to find her. As I climbed the stairs, I heard faint, muffled sounds coming from our bedroom. My heart began to race. Something felt off. I approached the door and, without thinking, pushed it open. What I saw will forever be etched in my memory. There on our bed was Jessica, entangled with Mark. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there, frozen in shock and disbelief. My heart pounded in my chest, and a surge of anger coursed through my veins. "Jessica! Mark!" I yelled, my voice breaking the silence like a thunderclap. Jessica's head snapped up, and her eyes widened in horror. She scrambled off the bed, fumbling to cover herself with the sheets. Mark, looking equally panicked, tried to get dressed hastily. "Michael, I can explain," Jessica stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Explain?" I shouted, unable to control my rage. "What is there to explain? How long has this been going on?" Mark tried to slip past me, but I grabbed him by the arm. "You're not going anywhere," I said through gritted teeth. "I want answers." Mark stuttered. "It was a mistake, Michael. It didn't mean anything." I released him, shoving him away in disgust. "Get out of my house," I commanded. He didn't need to be told twice. Mark fled, leaving Jessica and me alone in the room. Jessica collapsed on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. How could she do this to me? To us? I couldn't bear to look at her. Without another word, I turned and left the room. I spent the night at a hotel, unable to face going back to that house. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. All I could see was Jessica and Mark together. The image seared into my mind. As dawn broke, a new resolve formed within me. I couldn't let this go unpunished. Jessica had destroyed our marriage, our trust, and our love. She had to feel the same pain and humiliation she had inflicted on me. The next day, when I was sure Jessica was out, I went back home. I found her phone and began to search through it. As I expected, there were messages and photos that confirmed her infidelity. My blood boiled as I looked at the explicit pictures she had sent to Mark. With a grim determination, I copied those photos. I knew exactly what I had to do. Jessica had to pay for her betrayal. Everyone we knew would see her for who she truly was. I created a fake social media account and began sending the photos to all our friends, family, and even her colleagues. The reaction was immediate and severe. Jessica's phone started buzzing nonstop as people bombarded her with calls and messages. Her perfect image was shattered, and she became the subject of gossip and scorn. When she finally confronted me, her face red with anger and humiliation, I didn't flinch. "Why, Michael? Why did you do this?" she cried. "Because you deserved it," I replied coldly. "You destroyed our life, Jessica. Now you know how it feels." With that, I turned my back on her, leaving her to deal with the fallout of her actions. There was no going back now. Our marriage was over, and there was no chance of forgiveness. I would move on, but she would always carry the stain of her betrayal. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and chaos. Jessica's betrayal had not only destroyed our marriage, but also shattered the carefully constructed image we had built in our social circles. Friends and acquaintances reached out, their messages filled with shock and sympathy. Some were supportive, others were merely curious, hungry for the juicy details of our scandal. Jessica, on the other hand, was facing the full brunt of the fallout. She had become a pariah. Her phone rang incessantly, each call a reminder of her infidelity. Friends distanced themselves. Her colleagues whispered behind her back, and even her family was appalled. The once vibrant and confident woman was now a shadow of her former self, consumed by shame and regret. One evening, about a week after the incident, Jessica showed up at my temporary apartment. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she looked utterly defeated. She stood in the doorway, hesitating before finally stepping inside. "Michael, please," she began, her voice trembling. I know I've hurt you, but can we talk? I gestured for her to sit down, remaining silent as she tried to collect her thoughts. Seeing her like this, part of me wanted to feel pity, but the pain and anger were still too raw. I don't even know where to start, she said, wiping away fresh tears. I made a terrible mistake. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand that it was never about you. It was my weakness, my stupidity. Why, Jessica? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Why did you do it? She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I felt neglected, lonely. You were always so busy with work. Mark was just there. He paid attention to me, made me feel wanted. Her words cut deep. I'd been working long hours trying to provide for us, but I never realized she felt so alone. Yet her explanation didn't justify her betrayal. I understand you were lonely, Jessica, but there were other ways to deal with it, I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. You could have talked to me, gone to counseling, anything but this. She nodded, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I know, and I'm so sorry. I've ruined everything. For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, I spoke. We need to move forward, Jessica. What's done is done. We can't change the past, but we need to figure out what comes next. I want to make things right, she said, her voice pleading. I know I can't fix what I've done, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. Oh, you can start by respecting my need for space, I said firmly. We need time apart to heal and think about what we really want. Jessica agreed, albeit reluctantly. She knew the road to any kind of reconciliation, if it was even possible, would be long and arduous. We decided to put the house up for sale and split the proceeds. It was the practical thing to do, given that neither of us could bear living there with the memories of what had happened. In the meantime, I threw myself into my work, trying to distract myself from the pain. But every quiet moment was a reminder of the life I had lost. Friends invited me out, trying to cheer me up, but their pity only made me feel worse. One night, after a particularly difficult day, I found myself at a local bar, nursing a drink. I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that had settled in my chest. As I stared into my glass, a familiar voice broke my reverie. Michael? I looked up to see Rachel, an old friend from college. She had always been a comforting presence in my life, even though we had lost touch over the years. Rachel, hey, I said, surprised but genuinely glad to see her. She sat down next to me, her eyes full of concern. I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. Thanks, I replied, managing a weak smile. It's been rough. We talked for hours, catching up on lost time and reminiscing about the good old days. Rachel's presence was a balm to my wounded heart, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. As the night wore on, I realized that moving forward didn't mean forgetting the past. It meant finding new ways to cope, new reasons to smile, and new people to share my life with. Jessica's betrayal had broken me, but it hadn't destroyed me. I was still here, still fighting to rebuild my life. As Rachel and I said our goodbyes that night, I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but I also knew that I wasn't alone. With time, support, and a lot of inner strength, I could find my way back to happiness. As the weeks passed, I found myself oscillating between moments of anger, sadness, and an eerie sense of calm. I focused on practical matters, such as finalizing the sale of our house and sorting out our finances. Each task served as a distraction, but the gnawing pain of betrayal was never far from my mind. One Saturday morning, as I was packing up my belongings, I came across Jessica's old phone. She had recently upgraded to a newer model, and this one was left forgotten in a drawer. I picked it up, contemplating what to do with it. Part of me wanted to throw it away, but another part of me was curious. Could there be more to uncover about her affair? I powered it on, and after a few moments, the screen lit up. To my surprise, she hadn't bothered to change the password. As I navigated through the phone, I found a trove of messages and photos exchanged between Jessica and Mark. My stomach churned as I read their flirtatious texts, the plans they made behind my back, and the explicit photos they shared. One message in particular caught my eye. It was from a few months ago when Jessica had mentioned feeling neglected and lonely. Mark's response was filled with false sympathy and flattery, telling her everything she wanted to hear. It was clear that he had taken advantage of her vulnerability, but it didn't absolve her of responsibility. I felt a fresh wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. It was bad enough that she had cheated, but seeing the details laid bare made it even worse. I needed to do something with this information, something that would make her truly understand the gravity of her actions. An idea began to form in my mind. I knew it was vengeful, but I couldn't shake the need to make her feel the same humiliation and pain she had caused me. I decided to compile all the incriminating evidence and share it with our closest friends and family. If Jessica's reputation was going to be ruined, it would be on my terms. I spent the next few days meticulously organizing the messages and photos. I created a new email account and drafted a message explaining what had happened. It was a cold, clinical recounting of events, devoid of emotion. Attached to the email were screenshots of the conversations and photos that left no room for doubt. As I prepared to hit send, a part of me hesitated. Was this really the right thing to do? Would it make me feel any better? But the desire for revenge overpowered my doubts. I clicked the send button, and the emails went out to dozens of people. The fallout was immediate. My phone began buzzing with messages and calls from friends and family, all expressing their shock and disbelief. Jessica, on the other hand, was bombarded with angry and accusatory messages. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. A few days later, Jessica confronted me at my apartment. Her face was a mix of rage and desperation. "Michael, how could you do this to me?" she shouted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You've ruined my life." I looked at her, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. "You ruined your own life, Jessica," I replied coldly. "You made the choices that led us here. I just made sure everyone knew the truth." She broke down, collapsing onto the couch. "I know I made a terrible mistake," she sobbed. "But this is too much. You've destroyed me." I watched her cry, feeling a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of finding her in bed with Mark. "You didn't think about the consequences when you were with him," I said. "Now you have to live with them." Over the next few weeks, Jessica tried to salvage what she could of her reputation. She reached out to friends and family, begging for forgiveness and understanding. Some were sympathetic, but many were unforgiving. She lost her job, her friends distanced themselves, and even her family struggled to look past her betrayal. For me, seeing her suffer brought a fleeting sense of justice, but it didn't bring the closure I had hoped for. Instead, it left me feeling empty and hollow. I realized that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, wasn't the solution to my pain. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I reflected on everything that had happened. Jessica's betrayal had changed my life irrevocably, but it didn't have to define my future. I needed to find a way to move forward, to heal, and rebuild. I reached out to a therapist, hoping to work through my emotions and find a path to forgiveness, not for Jessica, but for myself. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I knew that with time and effort, I could find peace and maybe even happiness again. In the meantime, I decided to focus on self-improvement. I started going to the gym, picked up new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. As for Jessica, our paths rarely crossed. She had moved out of the city, trying to start fresh somewhere new. I wished her well, hoping that she too could find a way to heal and learn from her mistakes. Life went on, and with each passing day, the weight of the past grew lighter. I had been through hell, but I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient, and that, I realized, was the true victory. The divorce proceedings were swift and relatively straightforward, but that didn't make them any less painful. Sitting across from Jessica in the sterile office of our attorney, I could hardly recognize the woman I had once loved. Her face was etched with sorrow and regret, but I couldn't let that sway me. We both signed the papers, making our separation official. Afterward, I returned to my apartment, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. The chapter of my life with Jessica was officially closed, but the wounds were still fresh. I needed to rebuild, to find a new path forward. One of the first steps in that direction was selling our house. It was too full of painful memories to remain a part of my life. We put the house on the market and quickly found a buyer. The real estate agent walked us through the final steps, and soon enough, The keys were handed over to the new owners. Watching them move in was bittersweet. This was the house where we had planned to build a life together, now being handed off to strangers. With the money from the sale, I decided to invest in a small but comfortable condo downtown. It was a fresh start, a blank canvas where I could build new memories and heal. Moving in was a chaotic process, but it felt good to be busy and to focus on something productive. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, I came across an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of happier times, our weddings, vacations, family gatherings. As I flipped through the pages, I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with sorrow. These were the remnants of a life that was now gone. Despite the pain, I knew that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison my future. I decided to put the album away, not as a way to forget, but as a way to move forward. It was a part of my past, but it didn't have to define my present or my future. Around this time, I began to notice a change in my social interactions. Friends who had once been a constant presence started to fade away. Some couldn't handle the awkwardness of my situation, while others sided with Jessica, believing her pleas for forgiveness and redemption. It was a lonely realization, but it also helped me see who my true friends were. Rachel, my old college friend, was one of those true friends. She continued to check in on me, offering support and a listening ear. One evening, she invited me to a small get-together with a few mutual friends. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping it would be a distraction from my turmoil. The gathering was held at Rachel's apartment, a cozy space filled with warm lighting and soft music. As I walked in, I was greeted with genuine smiles and hugs. It felt good to be surrounded by people who cared and who wanted to see me happy again. Rachel introduced me to some new faces, and as the night wore on, I found myself laughing and enjoying the company. One person in particular caught my attention, a woman named Monica. She was bright, cheerful, and had an infectious laugh. We struck up a conversation and soon discovered we had a lot in common. Monica was a breath of fresh air. She didn't pry into my past or judge me for the baggage I carried. Instead, she was simply interested in getting to know me, the person I was now. We exchanged numbers and promised to meet up for coffee sometime. Over the next few weeks, Monica and I grew closer. We went on casual dates, exploring the city and sharing stories about our lives. She was understanding and patient, never pushing me to open up more than I was comfortable with. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of happiness and hope. As our relationship developed, I continued to work on myself. Therapy sessions helped me process the trauma of the past year and allowed me to let go of the lingering anger towards Jessica. It was a slow process, but each day brought a little more clarity and peace. One evening, after a particularly enlightening therapy session, I received a call from Jessica. It was unexpected, and my heart raced as I answered. Her voice was shaky, filled with a mix of anxiety and sorrow. "Michael, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," she began, "but I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I hesitated, but something in her voice made me agree. We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, Jessica was already there, looking more fragile than ever. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as I sat down. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized I never properly apologized to you. I'm so sorry for everything I've done, for the pain I caused you." I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I appreciate that, Jessica. It's been a difficult journey for both of us." "I know," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've lost so much because of my actions, but I've also learned a lot. I'm trying to be a better person." We talked for a while, both of us sharing our struggles and the lessons we'd learned. It wasn't a conversation about reconciliation, but rather about closure. By the end, I felt a sense of relief. It was the final step in letting go of the past and moving forward. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt lighter. I knew that I was finally ready to embrace the future, to build a new life filled with hope, happiness, and the possibility of love. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. Life was gradually returning to a semblance of normalcy. My relationship with Monica was blossoming, and I found solace in the routines of my new life. Yet, the shadows of the past occasionally crept in, reminding me of the unfinished business that still lingered. One evening, after a long day at work, I decided to stop by the local grocery store to pick up some essentials. As I walked through the aisles, mentally ticking off items from my list, I spotted a familiar figure near the produce section. It was Mark, the man who had shattered my world. He hadn't seen me yet, engrossed in selecting apples. A surge of anger and adrenaline coursed through my veins. Every instinct screamed for confrontation, for justice. But I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Confronting him here in public wouldn't solve anything. Still, I couldn't just walk away. Summoning all my resolve, I approached him. "Mark," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. He turned, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition, then to guilt. "Michael," he said, his voice faltering. I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I replied, keeping my tone as even as possible. "But since we're here, maybe we should talk." Mark nodded, looking visibly uncomfortable. We moved to a quieter corner of the store, away from prying eyes. He shifted nervously, avoiding my gaze. "Look, Michael, I know I messed up," he began, his voice low. "I never meant to hurt you. It was a huge mistake." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. "A mistake? You call sleeping with my wife a mistake?" He looked down, shamefaced. "I know. It was wrong, and I regret it every day. I didn't think about the consequences, about what it would do to you, to Jessica, to everyone involved." "You didn't think," I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "No, you just acted on your selfish desires without a care in the world." Mark flinched but didn't argue. "I've been trying to make amends, to be a better person. I left the job and moved to a different town. I even started going to therapy." His words did little to quell the storm inside me, but I couldn't deny the sincerity in his eyes. "Good for you," I said, my tone cold. "But that doesn't change what you did. You destroyed my marriage, my trust, my life." "I'm sorry, Michael," he said, his voice breaking. "I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do is try to make things right moving forward." We stood there in tense silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make him feel the pain I had endured. But another part of me knew that holding on to this anger would only poison my own life further. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Mark," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I need to move on from this, for my own sake." He nodded, relief and regret mingling in his expression. "I understand. Thank you for giving me a chance to apologize." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving Mark behind. As I exited the store, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger and sadness, but also a small sense of closure. Confronting Mark hadn't been easy, but it was a necessary step in my journey to healing. Later that evening, I met Monica for dinner. We had planned a cozy night in, cooking together and watching a movie. As we prepared the meal, I told her about my encounter with Mark. She listened intently, her eyes full of empathy and understanding. "That must have been hard for you," she said softly, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "It was," I admitted, "but it also felt necessary, like I needed to face him to really start moving on." Monica smiled, her presence a soothing balm to my wounded heart. "I'm proud of you, Michael. It takes a lot of strength to confront the past like that." As we sat down to eat, I realized how far I had come since the day I discovered Jessica's betrayal. My life was slowly piecing itself back together, not in the way I had originally planned, but in a way that felt more authentic and grounded. That night, as Monica and I curled up on the couch, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The pain of the past will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I had faced my demons, and I was building a future filled with hope and love. In the months that followed, Monica and I grew even closer. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and created a life that was rich and fulfilling. The scars of my past remained, but they were now a testament to my resilience and strength. Looking back, I realized that the journey through betrayal and heartbreak had ultimately led me to a place of profound growth and self-discovery. It wasn't the path I had chosen, but it was the one that had made me who I was, and for that, I was grateful. Monica and I continued to build a life together, finding joy in the simple moments and discovering new depths of connection. Her unwavering support and understanding were instrumental in my healing process, and I found myself slowly letting go of the past. One sunny Saturday afternoon, we decided to take a road trip to a nearby coastal town. The drive was scenic, with winding roads that offered stunning views of the ocean. Monica played her favorite playlist, and we sang along, laughter filling the car. When we arrived, we strolled along the beach, the salty breeze and the sound of crashing waves creating a peaceful ambiance. We found a cozy spot to sit, spreading out a blanket and unpacking a picnic lunch. As we ate, we talked about everything and nothing, enjoying the freedom of the open sky and the limitless horizon. Monica turned to me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Michael, I've been thinking about something." "Yeah?" I replied, curious. "I want to take a pottery class," she said, grinning. "I've always wanted to try it, and I think it could be fun for us to do together." I smiled, loving her enthusiasm. "I think that's a great idea. I've never tried it, but I'm up for anything with you." We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the town, visiting local shops, and indulging in some delicious ice cream. By the time we headed back home, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The following week, we signed up for a pottery class at a local studio. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Karen, welcomed us and introduced us to the basics of working with clay. We spent our evenings learning to mold and shape, our hands getting messy, and our creations often turning out lopsided. One evening, as we worked on our latest project, Monica looked over at me, her face smudged with clay. "You know, Michael, I think this is helping us both more than we realize." I nodded, understanding what she meant. The process of creating something from nothing, of shaping and reshaping, mirrored our journey of healing and rebuilding. It was a reminder that, despite the imperfections, there was beauty in the effort and the growth. Our time in the pottery studio became a cherished routine, a space where we could forget our worries and focus on the present. As the weeks passed, our skills improved, and we started to create pieces that we were genuinely proud of. The sense of accomplishment was a balm to my soul, reinforcing the idea that I was capable of moving forward and creating a new life. One evening, after a particularly successful session, Monica and I decided to celebrate by going out to dinner. We chose a quaint little restaurant, known for its cozy atmosphere and delicious food. As we sat across from each other, the soft candlelight flickering between us, I felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had come into my life and helped me heal. "Monica," I began, taking her hand in mine, "I don't know if I've said this enough, but thank you. Thank you for being here, for supporting me, and for helping me find joy again." Her eyes softened, and she squeezed my hand. "Michael, you've given me just as much. You've opened your heart to me despite everything you've been through, and that means the world to me." At that moment, I realized how far I had come. The pain of Jessica's betrayal was still a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. With Monica by my side, I was building something new, something beautiful. As the months passed, our relationship deepened. We continued to explore new hobbies, travel to new places, and support each other in our personal and professional endeavors. The pottery class became a symbol of our journey together, a testament to the power of healing, growth, and love. One evening, as we were glazing our latest creations, Monica turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Michael, there's something I want to talk to you about." "Of course," I said, setting down my brush. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine. "I've been thinking about our future, about what we want and where we see ourselves in a few years. I know we've both been through a lot, but I feel like we're building something really special." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "I feel the same way, Monica. You've become such an important part of my life, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." Her face lit up with a smile. "I'm so glad to hear you say that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I love you, Michael, and I want to take this journey with you, wherever it leads." My heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too, Monica, more than words can express, and I want nothing more than to build a future with you." At that moment, surrounded by the tools of our shared hobby and the creations we had made together, I knew that I had found something truly precious. Monica and I were not just healing from our pasts, we were creating a new story, one filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. As we left the studio that night, hand in hand, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey of healing was ongoing, but with Monica by my side, I knew that the future was bright. Together, we were stronger, and together, we would face whatever came our way. Life with Monica was everything I had hoped for and more. We had built a strong foundation of trust and love, and our future seemed brighter with each passing day. Yet life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One evening, as Monica and I were preparing dinner together, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart skip a beat. It was a message from Jessica. "Hey Michael, I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet?" The words were simple, but they carried a weight that pulled me back into the past. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Monica noticed the change in my demeanor and looked at me with concern. "Everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "It's Jessica," I said, showing her the message. "She wants to meet." Monica's expression softened with understanding. "Do you want to see her?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks it might be good to get some closure, but another part of me is afraid of reopening old wounds." Monica took my hand in hers, offering a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons." I nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. After a moment's thought, I replied to Jessica's message, agreeing to meet her the next day at a nearby cafe. The following afternoon, I arrived at the cafe early, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I ordered a coffee and found a quiet corner to sit and wait. As the minutes ticked by, I couldn't help but wonder what Jessica wanted to say. When she finally walked in, I was struck by how different she looked. There was a tiredness in her eyes, a weight she hadn't carried before. She spotted me and offered a tentative smile as she approached. "Hi, Michael," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Jessica," I replied, motioning for her to sit. "It's been a while." She nodded, settling into the chair across from me. "It has. I appreciate you agreeing to meet." "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. Jessica took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke. I've been in therapy, trying to understand my actions and make amends for the pain I've caused. And there's something you need to know." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What is it?" She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "I'm pregnant, Michael, and I thought you deserved to know." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Of all the things I'd expected, this was not one of them. "Pregnant?" I echoed, struggling to process the information. She nodded, tears spilling over. "It's not Mark's. We haven't been in contact since everything happened. It's someone I met after we separated. But I wanted you to hear it from me, not through the grapevine." I sat back, trying to absorb the shock. "Why tell me now?" "Because I wanted to be honest with you," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I hurt you, and I know that no amount of apologies can change the past, but I'm trying to be a better person, and part of that is being honest about my life." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "Thank you for telling me, Jessica. I appreciate it. But I need to know. What do you want from me?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "I don't expect anything from you. I just thought you deserved to know. And maybe to ask for your forgiveness, if that's even possible." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes, the pain of her own journey evident in every word. Part of me wanted to offer forgiveness, to finally put the past to rest. But another part of me knew that forgiveness couldn't be rushed. It had to come naturally, in its own time. "I don't know if I can fully forgive you yet," I said honestly, "but I do appreciate your honesty. It means a lot." Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. Thank you for hearing me out." As we sat there in silence, I felt a strange sense of closure. The pain of the past was still there, but it felt more manageable, more distant. I knew that moving forward wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had Monica, and together, we could face whatever came our way. When I finally left the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I drove back to my condo, where Monica was waiting for me. As soon as I walked in, she enveloped me in a warm hug. "How did it go?" she asked softly. I told her everything: Jessica's news, our conversation, and the emotions it had stirred. Monica listened patiently, her presence a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "You did the right thing," she said when I finished. "And whatever happens next, we'll face it together." I looked into her eyes, feeling a surge of gratitude and love. "I know. Thank you for being here, for understanding." Always, she said, kissing me gently. Now let's make some dinner and relax. We've had enough drama for one day. As we cooked together, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road to healing was long and winding, but with Monica by my side, I knew that I could navigate it. Together we were stronger, and together we would build a future filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. The months following my meeting with Jessica were a whirlwind of emotions and growth. Monica and I continued to strengthen our bond, navigating the challenges and joys of life together. Jessica's revelation had been a shock, but it also marked a turning point, a moment where I could choose to fully embrace my future with Monica. One crisp autumn morning, Monica and I decided to take a hike in the nearby mountains. The leaves had turned brilliant shades of red, orange, and gold, creating a breathtaking tapestry against the clear blue sky. As we walked, hand in hand, the fresh air filled our lungs, and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot provided a soothing rhythm. We reached a scenic overlook, where the valley below stretched out in a patchwork of fall colors. Monica sat down on a large rock, and I joined her, the panoramic view taking my breath away. "Michael," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I've been thinking a lot about our journey together, how far we've come, and how much we've grown, and I feel like this is just the beginning." I turned to her, feeling a rush of love and gratitude. "I feel the same way, Monica. You've brought so much light into my life, and I can't imagine my future without you." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Michael. Will you marry me?" Her words hung in the air, a perfect blend of surprise and joy. My heart swelled, and I felt a rush of happiness so intense that it brought tears to my eyes. "Yes, Monica," I said, my voice choked with emotion. 1,000 times, yes. We embraced, our hearts beating in sync, the beauty of the moment enveloping us. The journey that had begun in pain and betrayal had led me to this place of profound love and commitment. Monica had become my anchor, my partner, my everything. As we descended the mountain, engaged and elated, we talked about our dreams for the future, our wedding, our home, the life we wanted to build together. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by the lightness of hope and possibility. The months that followed were filled with wedding preparations and the joyous anticipation of our new life together. We chose a small, intimate ceremony with our closest friends and family, held in a beautiful garden that reflected the natural beauty we both loved. On our wedding day, as Monica walked down the aisle, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She looked radiant, her smile lighting up the world. When we exchanged vows, I promised to love, honor, and cherish her for the rest of my life. In her eyes, I saw the same commitment and love reflected back at me. The reception was a celebration of our love, filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. As the evening drew to a close, Monica and I shared a quiet moment under the stars, holding each other close. "Thank you for choosing me," I whispered, my heart full. "Thank you for loving me," she replied, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Our honeymoon was a magical journey through Italy, where we explored ancient cities, savored delicious food, and created memories that would last a lifetime. It was a perfect start to our married life, a time of deep connection and shared joy. Back home, we settled into a new routine, filled with the simple pleasures of daily life. We continued our pottery classes, and our creations are now a testament to our journey together. Our home became a sanctuary of love and laughter, a place where we could be ourselves, supported and cherished. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, Monica turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Michael, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." "What's that?" I asked, curious. "I've been thinking about starting a family," she said, her voice filled with both excitement and nervousness. "I know it's a big step, but I feel ready, and I want to share that journey with you." I felt a surge of happiness at her words. "I've been thinking about that too," I admitted. "I can't imagine a better partner to start a family with." We spent the rest of the evening discussing our hopes and dreams for the future, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. The love that had carried us through so many challenges now promised new beginnings and endless possibilities. As we lay in bed that night, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey of healing and love had brought me to this place of contentment and joy. With Monica by my side, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more in love than ever. Our story was one of resilience, growth, and the transformative power of love. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the beauty of finding love in unexpected places. And as we drifted off to sleep, I knew that this was only the beginning of our beautiful shared journey.